Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and I'm going to be teaching you Chapter 16, Dissolving the Ego. Ego serves no purpose. Of course, we're going to be doing our meditation first, but then we're going to move into this talk from the book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This is where you're going to understand what the ego is, the complications that it causes you, and then how to actually eliminate it from the mind. Because as long as the ego is in the mind, you're going to experience difficulties and struggles in your day-to-day life within your relationships, both personally and professionally. So eradicating it, the mind will reside more peaceful and joyful, and you'll be able to have more harmonious relationships. So I'd like to welcome all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly, and at the same time invite you to join for our meditation. I'm going to start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. Then I'm going to come in with some guidance. There's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're all meditating together. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start today's class, helping you to understand all about the ego and how to eliminate it from the mind. So if you'd like to join, maybe you take a position, either seated, lying, or standing. These work really well for online learning. And then, as I mentioned, we'll ease in with the chanting, which you guys are welcome to join in on. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Otang Mahakawanhang Apivatami Savakato Mahakawata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable. In the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti Piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone in class today, whether you're joining through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Welcome to all of you guys. Maybe you're even listening to this on the replay. This particular topic today is really important because it takes a really long time to dissolve the ego and eliminate it from the mind. One of the first things to do to be able to dissolve it is to actually understand what it is. So I'm going to help you to understand what the ego is, and then I'm going to explain to you all the challenges and difficulties that you experience because of this. And then I'm going to teach you how to gradually eliminate it over a consistent long-term period of time. As you guys have questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any and all questions that you like. So we're going to jump right in and just help you to start understanding what the ego is. What the ego is it's a collection of experiences from the past and the future, certain expectations that you have of yourself. There's this accumulation of thoughts and ideas and perceptions. What a perception is like a view or opinion that the mind holds on to. This is part of the ego, that you might have these certain thoughts or ideas or perceptions about your self-image or your self-identity. The ego is going to contain arrogance or pride, judgment, measuring and comparing, thinking of yourself as being superior or inferior. The ego is something that actually comes along in terms of our experiences in our past. In our past lives, in our animal existences, we needed ego. Without ego, we wouldn't have been able to survive. But in the human world, we actually don't need ego, and it actually stands in our way of having harmonious relationships and wonderful experiences in our life. That we find that our relationships can oftentimes become strained and struggled due to the actual ego. So in our animal existences, we needed this ego. We needed this pecking order. We needed to know who was above us and who was below us. Because as a pack of wolves, we needed to know who's the alpha male and who's the alpha female, because they're teaching us how to hunt, and they're breeding, and they're helping us to understand how to survive as a pack of wolves. As a matriarch of our herd, she was the one in the elephant herd that was showing us where the migration paths are, where the food is, where the water is to drink. And if we didn't know who the matriarch of our herd was, we wouldn't have been able to survive as an elephant. So in the animal world, there's this strong pecking order to understand where you are and who's above you and who's below you. But in this human world, we actually don't need that. And it comes with us as we're moving into the human world. The conditions are present to allow the ego to form and get deeply rooted in the mind to the point where it stands in our way of being able to have sustaining, fulfilling, and long-term relationships where they can be satisfied. And as long as the ego is there and you're experiencing putting out ego towards others, what you're going to notice in a lot of these situations is people are just going to push you aside, because they're not going to be interested in being around someone who's arrogant and boastful and prideful, someone who's judging others. And as your mind's doing this, it's actually just harming your own mind, because as you're judging other people and looking down on them, it's actually causing harm within your own mind. So it's important to understand what the ego is so that then we can talk about how to eradicate it. During the lifetime of the Buddha, the word ego didn't exist. So he didn't use this word ego. Instead, he was describing things through the 10 fetters, those 10 individual pollutions that the mind has. And remember what a fetter is. It's a shackle and a chain and a ball that's around your ankle, and it keeps prisoners trapped in a certain area. This is what they used during ancient times. They would just keep prisoners in an open field, where today we put prisoners in jail cells or prison cells. So when the Buddha discovered these 10 individual pollutions, he referred to them as fetters because it's keeping the mind trapped and confined in a certain area. So the fetter of personal existence view and conceit is what we are referring to as the ego. But it actually is very helpful to understand these as two separate things. And then we can talk about it as the ego. But by understanding it as two separate things, you'll understand the symptoms are very different between these two things. And the remedy and the solution of how to eradicate it from the mind is very different. But when we talk about the ego, we're talking about these two things of personal existence view and conceit. What the personal existence view is this is where the mind has confusion or misunderstanding or misperception, thinking that this body or this mind is who you are. So the mind clings to a self-image and or a self-identity, thinking that this is who you are as a person. So now when you go out into the world and say you spill spaghetti sauce or chocolate ice cream on your clothing, you might experience embarrassment. Where that's coming from is your personal existence view. The mind is clinging to this body, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And if you're being perceived that way, you experience happiness or excitement. But if you're not being perceived that way, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed or maybe embarrassed. So if you've ever had like a wrinkle or a pimple or a mole or a gray hair, or you're losing your hair, or you get a little extra fat or something like this, and you look in the mirror and you're shaken up by that, that's your personal existence view. That's the mind thinking that this body is who you are as a person, and it wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. If you've ever stood in front of your closet and you sat there and you thought, who am I going to see today? And how would I like to appear to those people? And you go through your closet and you figure out what clothes you're going to wear. Maybe you put on a certain set of clothing. You look in the mirror and you're like, nope, that's not how I want to look. And you go get another set, you put that on, you're like, nope, that's not how I want to look. And you get a third set and all of a sudden, that's how I want to look. Now I feel comfortable. Or maybe you were like me when I was a teenager. I used to get out the gel and the mousse and run it all through the hair and try to get every last little hair in exactly the right place before I could go outside. And I didn't feel comfortable going outside until every little hair was in exactly the right spot. So much so that I would oftentimes miss the school bus because of this. This is the personal existence view, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And as long as the mind is experiencing what it wants in terms of its physical appearance, you'll experience those pleasant feelings. But because of impermanence, those hairs can't be in the same place all the time. You're not going to have tight skin all the time. You're going to have wrinkles and pimples and moles. You're going to have gray hairs. that's all impermanence. But when the mind's clinging and craving for this body to be a certain way permanently, and now it experiences this impermanence with the physical body, that's where the mind then experiences the painful feelings that come into the mind. And then the same thing is happening with the self-identity, that there might be certain self-identity that the mind is clinging to and holding on to. This can be about your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. There can be any number of things that the mind is holding on to. Whenever your mind is thinking, I am this, that's the self-identity. Like I am American, or I am Canadian, or I am a police officer. I am a Buddhist teacher. I am a taxi driver. I am a food server. I am a yoga teacher. I am a boyfriend, a girlfriend. I am a husband. I am a wife. Any of this I am around any particular topic, your mind is holding on to a certain identity and seeing that as who you are as your identity. So if you were ever in a relationship and you thought of yourself as I am a boyfriend or I am a girlfriend, well, as long as you guys were together, your mind might have been fine with that. But then when you guys broke up, you might have struggled because now you're single and the mind is identifying with I am a boyfriend or I am a girlfriend. And you might have felt like you had to hurry up and get right back into another relationship in order to assume that identity again, where the mind thought that that was the way to solve the problem, is hurry up and get back into another relationship. So now you can assume that identity of I am a boyfriend or I am a girlfriend. Or if you've ever had a job or occupation, like I am a police officer, and maybe you did that for a period of time, but then you maybe got injured, maybe you got retired, or maybe you got fired, and now you're maybe a taxi driver. And if the mind is identifying with I am a police officer, in that situation where you're a taxi driver, the mind's going to really struggle during that time frame. It's going to feel uncomfortable because it views this occupation as part of your identity, and now that's not intact. Or say you're at a restaurant and two tables over, they're talking very kind and loving and warm about a certain type of people, like where you come from. Maybe like I am German, or I am Lithuanian, or I am Mexican, or any of this I am. Maybe they're talking really fondly. Maybe they're saying all Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle. I've never heard that before, but maybe this could actually happen, right? That people would talk like that. And now you'd be like, oh, wow, they're talking about me. Well, then two tables over, they're maybe talking in a degrading and disparaging way about the place where you come from, where now you experience these painful feelings. You might even be ready to fight because now they're talking about me, right? Maybe they're talking degrading and disparagingly about Chinese people or Mexican people or Europeans or anything like this. And if you identify with that as who you are, now you're going to really struggle and have painful feelings during that situation. So this is part of the ego. It's the mind's confusion, its lack of wisdom, its misunderstanding, its misperception, thinking that this body is you and or this mind is you. You can even have things like I had a student one time call me up. We were having a personal guidance session, and they were really struggling after COVID. And they were explaining how they are a good tipper. They said, I'm a good tipper, but every time I go into these restaurants and these different establishments, they have contact payment now. And when I order my coffee in like 30 seconds, they turn around the screen and I have to put in how much I'm going to pay. And there's always something there for a tip. And they want me to tip either 25%, 28%, 30 something percent. And he's like, I'm so conflicted because I am a good tipper, but yet they keep wanting me to tip. And I don't tip in that situation. But in all these other situations, I tip, and I'm really struggling here. And they didn't understand why. And they kept saying, I am a good tipper. I am a good tipper, right? Well, that was the personal existence view that the mind was holding on to, that I am a good tipper. And now when you're tipping, you feel just fine. But in a situation where you don't tip, the mind struggles with that because that identity is not intact in that situation. So you're going to need to get to the point where you understand what personal existence view is more and more, and you learn how to eliminate it. I'm going to teach you how to eliminate it today, but you need to be able to be sure that you understand what it is and that you've independently verified to understand what this is. Because what the Buddha teaches you is that there is no self, that this body isn't you, this mind isn't you, none of this stuff is you. But the mind's going to cling to it as if this is who you are. So there is a body and there is a mind, and it's come together for this existence. And we call this a person. But this isn't you. It's not who you are as a person. And I've given you in different classes ways to independently verify this. Like I share with you to think about your childhood, your teenage years, your early adulthood, and now, and think about yourself. How did you view yourself during those periods of time? Was it exactly the same, or has it been constantly changing? Like your personality, your character. Well, of course, it's been constantly changing. So you can see there is no permanent self. Or if your arm was amputated, and you only have one hand and one arm, you can ask yourself, are you less of a person? Yes or no? You have one arm that's amputated. You only have one hand and one arm. Are you less of a person? The answer that most people say is no, I'm not less of a person. And there you can see that this body is not you. Because if this body was you, then when you have less body, you would say, yes, I'm less of a person. But intellectually, you know that this body is not you. But in a situation where somebody says something positive or negative about this body, you'll experience certain pleasant feelings or painful feelings because of the mind's confusion and misunderstanding in that situation. But intellectually, you might know that this body is not you. Or you can point to yourself. I oftentimes mention this to students, like point to yourself. Where are you? And people will usually point to their chest and sometimes to their head. Well, if you're pointing to your chest, you need to look at what you're pointing to. You're most likely pointing to a shirt, right? And you need to ask yourself, is that who you are? Is that shirt you? If you took off that shirt and held it up, is that you? And most people say, no, that's not me. So, okay, throw away the shirt. Where are you? And now someone might point again. Well, you're pointing at skin, and you need to ask yourself, is that who you are? That skin you've got there, is that who you are? Is that who you think you are? Is that skin? If you took off that skin and ripped it off the body and held it up with your hand, is that who you are, that skin? Well, no, that's not you either. So we throw that away. So where are you? Right? And someone might point again. You've got bones, muscle tissue, organs, fluid, these kinds of things. They're just bits and pieces and parts. None of those things are you. But with the mind's confusion, with its misunderstanding, this personal existence view, this misperception in the mind, it's going to think that this is you. And that's going to run you into discontentedness in certain situations. You're going to get conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant feelings, as long as you cling to this self-image and or this self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. So the things I'm going to teach you today, once we get to it, I'm going to teach you how to eradicate this out of the mind, but it's going to be a gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. But sometimes people just spend a lot of time just trying to understand what personal existence view is. And if that's where you're at, then fine. Spend some time with that. Let me know when we get to the question period, and I'll be able to answer your questions for you. Then there's conceit. What conceit is the arrogance, the pride, the judging, the measuring or comparing, putting yourself above people or below people, thinking you're superior or inferior. And now when you're putting yourself above people with your chest all puffed out and being all boastfulness, you might be looking down on people and talking to them in a negative and degrading way. But then when you're around other people who you look up to, maybe like a boss or a famous politician or celebrity or something like this, maybe you're all shaken up. You go into your boss's office and your mind's all cluttered and you're all shaken up because you look at them as being above you, and now you can't perform well in your profession, and you're having difficulties to communicate to your boss in a professional way because your mind's all shaken up. So as long as you're putting yourself above people, you're probably going to put yourself below people in certain situations too. So this conceit is standing in your way of being able to see everybody as equal. And now by putting yourself above people or below people, when you walk into a social situation, you're having to look for a pecking order of who's above me and who's below me. And now your mind's having to constantly switch back and forth because the people who you think that you are above, you got to talk to them in one way. You need to talk to them in a degrading and disparaging way, talking down to them. But the people who you see as above you, and maybe you want something from them, you got to talk really kind and really polite and really kiss up to them in a certain way. So now your mind's having to switch back and forth like this, having this real work and exhaustion in the mind, this burden that you're carrying around, trying to figure out who's above you and who's below you. And now you can be really exhausted by going to a social environment because you're constantly trying to figure out who's above you and below you. And you got to talk to one group of people one way, another group of people another way. And if you're in mixed company, your mind's constantly having to switch back and forth between this. But you can get to a point where you just see everybody as equal and you treat everybody equally. So here in Thailand, we have a king who performs a certain role, certain function, and has a certain lifestyle. And we also have people who sweep the street, right? And all of these people are equal. They have different roles and they have a different lifestyle, but we can treat everybody equally. When we see the king of Thailand, we can say, hello, sir, right? Or maybe the queen of Thailand, hello, ma'am, how are you, right? And we can why them and smile to them and be very polite and kind and friendly and warm and gentle with those people. But we can do exactly the same thing with the street sweeper too. Because again, these people are all equal. They have different lifestyle and different role in society. We like to have a king who's running the country in a certain way, or at least whatever their role is. I actually don't 100% know what a king does because I've never been a king. But whatever they do, we like to see them do that well. And we can be polite and kind with that person, not wanting or expecting anything from them. But we can also do the same thing with the person who sweeps the street, not wanting or expecting anything from them, just being polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. But when we have conceit in the mind, we can't do that because we're looking for this pecking order and trying to figure out where are we amongst these people. So when you go out into the world with a puffed up chest and measuring and comparing who's above you and who's below you, you can't have satisfying, fulfilling, and sustaining relationships, because when you go out being arrogant and prideful, people are going to be having a distaste in their mouth for you, and they're going to push you aside, and they're going to be disinterested in being around you. Sometimes people think that they need to go out into the world and be conceited and prideful and boastful in order to be able to accomplish something professionally, that they have to like boast about all the things that they've done in order to have a certain amount of credibility. But you don't need to do that. If you're an enlightened being, all you need to do is walk down the street with wisdom and a smile. You don't need to walk down the street trying to convince other people that you're somebody important. You can just get rid of that and just see yourself as equal to everybody. So if you're out there trying to convince other people that you are important, or you're looking for validation from other people, or you're giving people unsolicited guidance, you're like stepping into their life and putting expectations on them, thinking that what you do is right way and the way everything that everyone else does is the wrong way. This is the conceit. And if you're pushing your way into people's life and putting your expectations on people, trying to determine what's wholesome or unwholesome for others, this is the ego stepping in. And now it's going to hinder you from being able to have healthy relationships with all people. So I'm going to pause here. I have more to talk about the problems that the ego actually creates, but I'm going to stop here and see if you guys have questions about what personal existence view is and what conceit is, because after this, we're going to talk about the ego in general. And I would like to be sure that you guys understand these separately as personal existence view and conceit before we start talking about the ego in general. So if you have questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. It looks like Marcy has a question, so go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Teacher David. So my question is regarding personal existence view, that I am. There's a being that's in my life that identifies, and they repetitively declare, I am a victim. And I can see that this being is very, very much suffering, a lot of pain. And I'm not just sure how to get them. I mean, not that I want to get them, but what could I offer to them? Because they do reach out and they ask me, questions and things, but what piece of information could I relay to them that may help trigger the understanding of the Four Noble Truths? Like, how do you relate this personal existence view to the Four Noble Truths for them?
If I was you, I would ask them if they're interested in understanding something that's going to help them. And if they say yes, you can say, well, I will send you a YouTube video if that's something you would like. I can send that to you. And then you just send them a link of where I've taught that. or a link like this that I'm teaching this, because right now at this point, it would be challenging for you to teach others because you haven't really taught many people, and to be able to explain it to someone in a way that they can understand is very challenging. Plus, this person probably has attachment to you and you may have attachment to them, and that's going to get in the way of all of it. So it's kind of better if they learn from the resources that I share, because that way they can understand it better. So you might just ask them if they would like to understand more deeply, and ask them if they would like some resources to help them. And they're either going to say yes or no. And if they say yes, you send it to them and just let it be, because once, even if they say yes, they're interested in it, they may or may not even watch it. So you need to be able to ask them and then provide them the ability to get access to it, but then it's up to them whether they pursue it or not.
So I have done that with them. I asked them, would you like me to share something, with you that was very beneficial to my life? And I have sent them the links and I have done that, but they continue to come back with additional woke me type things. Mm-hmm. So maybe at this point, maybe I just need to step away from it, because I can see that the mind is struggling, because I see this being suffering, and they're asking for help, but they're not taking the help. So maybe mm-hmm. I just need to maybe just withdraw some of my time and energy with them.
You can also say to them, have you ever thought about getting help for this with someone who can actually help you? Because they're coming to you for the help and you actually don't really know how to help them 100%. Mm-hmm. And you could say, have you ever thought about contacting someone who can help you with this? And if they say yes or no, and if at some point they get to the conversation where you'd like to connect them with me, they're more than welcome to schedule an appointment with me, and they can ask me specific questions around those things and I can help them with it.
Yeah, I've done that as well with them. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, Teacher David. I appreciate it.
Yeah. If they're not getting the help, then they're just not going to get the help. That's not what they're interested in. They still have some more pain and suffering to experience before they're willing to actually do the work to get help then, if you've done all these things.
And it would be wise for me to kind of pull back and step away, right? Because at this point, they've asked, I've guided, I've given your contact information, I've provided them links, I've given them the resources, and they're still choosing not to really get into it. So at this point, it would be wise for me to say, okay, I've done what I can do. Be well, may you be well, and move past.
Yeah, because that way, if there's any craving or attachment in your mind around that, your mind can let that go. And then if they bring it up again, you can just say, hey, I've given you the things that you need, and I suggest you follow up on those.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Amina is asking a question on Facebook. She says, morning, everyone. A question about ego and work. My boss incorrectly accused me of misrepresenting myself, and after I used the 5 factors of well-spoken speech to explain the error with another organization and their tech department, this did not stop the person from continuing to be disparaging and treat me in a non-respectful way. The mind is clear that having expectations of others is senseless, and everyone will not treat me the same. Remaining calm, I suggest we have a meeting with our HR person to discuss this in a productive way and move forward positively. Any guidance on how I should approach this meeting, ensuring the ego stays dormant and the mind is calm? Yeah, so it sounds like you're making the right decisions there, Amina. And one thing I'll add before I answer that is, just because we use the 5 factors of well-spoken speech doesn't mean other people are going to do that, right? So this practice is about you ensuring that you're making wise decisions. And just because we're making wise decisions doesn't mean everyone around us is going to magically morph into treating us, wonderful. Because of impermanence, even an enlightened being experiences people who are sometimes bitter and harsh and hostile. It's very rare. It's very infrequent. And when that happens, their mind is fully protected. An enlightened being doesn't experience any frustration or annoyance or dislike or hatred towards that person. And it's very short-lived and so forth and so on. And that person, as an enlightened being, might even choose to just walk away from the situation. So it's very infrequent that those things happen for an enlightened being, but it can even happen. So you're going to experience people treating this being Amina in a disparaging, degrading, and disrespectful way. And I think it's very wise for you to bring in HR so that there's a third person there to be able to handle it and be able to hear what it is that you guys are talking about. Whenever someone's being disrespectful, it's important that you don't think about it as they're treating you a certain way and they're disparaging me. They're treating me in a disrespectful way, because that's the personal existence view getting in the way. You've got to get that out of the way and realize that they're just choosing to say things that are disrespectful. And that's the choice that they're making. But once you say they're doing it to me, that's allowing the personal existence view to come in. And that's where you can be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. So that would be my advice for you, is to get that out of there. And as you're going into this meeting, prior to that, if you've got several days lead up to it, be doing loving kindness meditation with this person in your loving kindness meditation, so that by the time you guys are together in the HR meeting, that you've got loving kindness cultivated in your mind towards this person. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. So now from this point, we're going to be talking about the ego. And when we're talking about the ego, I'm going to be talking about personal existence view and conceit together. We're going to eventually split them back out, because the solutions of how to resolve them and eliminate them are unique for personal existence view and conceit. But whenever you now hear me say the word ego, you can understand that that's personal existence view and conceit. Personal existence view is that clinging to the self-image and self-identity. The conceit is the arrogance, the pride, the judging, measuring and comparing, putting yourself above people or below people. And all of this is hindering you from being able to see true reality. The mind with its ego is going to have difficulty seeing true reality, because all these pollutions that are in your mind, the 10 fetters, including these, you're having to look through those out into the world. And when you look through that pollution out into the world, you will see those unwholesome qualities with other people, and you will read that reflection as coming from them, when in reality it's coming from your own mind. So the mind's ego will project its unwholesome qualities onto others, and then read that reflection that's coming back to you as coming from the other person, when in reality it's coming from your own mind. Let me give you an example of this. Let's just say you're in a business meeting and somebody walks in, and this man or woman walk in, and man, they've got the really nicest clothes on. Their hair is in exactly the right spot. Their skin complexion is just so perfect, have certain jewelry that they just look so beautiful or handsome. Maybe they have a certain perfume or cologne on. Maybe their clothing is just really immaculate. And they walk into the room and they sit down in the meeting. If your mind looks at them and says, wow, look at them trying to look so beautiful, or wow, look at him trying to look so handsome and show off to everybody, that's not true reality. What true reality is your mind wants to be that. Your mind wants to be looked at as the most handsome or the most beautiful. And now when somebody walks into the room, you're casting those unwholesome qualities within your own mind on that person and reading that as if it's coming from them, when in reality it's coming from your own mind. Because all that has truly happened is somebody walked into the room and sat down. That's all that's happened. And if you allow your mind to have this judgment where you're measuring and comparing yourself to this other person, you can think in negative ways towards this person. You might be clinging to a certain perception, which is your beliefs and opinions about what you think this other person is doing. And now by clinging to this, by clinging to your perceptions, by having judgment of this person, by casting your unwholesome qualities onto this individual, now when they speak up in the business meeting, you perhaps might be bitter and harsh and hostile with them. And now it damages your relationships with all the people that are in the room, because everybody's hearing you talk bitter and harsh and hostile to this person with your unskillful conduct. Like I said, in reality, all that's happened is somebody walked into the room. That's it. But the mind's going to create this whole story within your own mind, this perception of this belief or opinion of what's truly happening. But that's actually the mind's own unwholesome qualities, wanting to look beautiful or handsome to other people. And now when somebody actually walked in that you consider to be beautiful or handsome, your mind now has this issue with this person, and you're looking down on this particular person. So to talk a little bit more about what a perception is, they train police officers not to cling to their perceptions, okay? Because if you cling to a perception, this can actually be a life or death decision for you, and it can actually create all kinds of problems for you as a police officer. So for example, if I was a police officer and a call came out over the radio that, hey, down at the 7-Eleven, there's a robbery and you need to go there and take care of this. And of course, they don't talk that way on the radio of the police officers, right? But you know what I'm talking about. They're like, hey, there's a robbery going down at the 7-Eleven. We need you to get over there and take care of this. So lights and sirens, adrenaline's flowing or whatever. This person shows up to the 7-Eleven, slings open the door, and they see someone in a black hoodie with a gun straddling over top of a person that's on the floor with a bullet wound. And now this person is bleeding out all over the floor. Okay. Well, when that person walks in, if they pull out their gun as a police officer and start shooting the person in the black hoodie, they might have just made the most unwise decision ever. They might have just killed an innocent person, because that could actually be the cashier. The cashier might have struggled the gun out of their person's hand, and the robber might actually be on the floor. The cashier actually shot the robber, and now they're bleeding out all over the floor. So police officers are taught not to cling to their perception, that when they sling open the door and they pull their gun, they point it at the person in the black hoodie and they say, police, put down the gun, right? Because if this is a person who's looking to do harm, they're going to see that police officer and they're going to turn and they're going to point the gun at the police officer, right? And now the police officer is going to shoot them. But if this is the actual cashier, when they hear, police, put down the gun, oh, they're going to gladly put the gun down. Thank goodness there's help here. Thank goodness, right? They're going to please to put the gun down, right? So if as a police officer, if you cling to your perceptions, you can be making life and death decisions for other people, and it's going to drastically impact your life as well. And the same thing is true for you. When you're clinging to a perception, it's causing you difficulties in your life. Where if you cling to the way things seem to be, or any kind of belief or opinion that you have about the world, this is going to cause you to make unwise decisions, because you're not making decisions based on the truth. You would like to always be making decisions based on the truth. So in this situation where somebody walks into the room and you cling to your perception of, look at them wanting to look beautiful or handsome, you're clinging to a perception. This is your belief or opinion about how things seem to be based on your own unwholesome qualities of personal existence view and conceit. Because of your personal existence view and your conceit, wanting to look good in front of others and wanting to look above others, you think that other people are doing that as well, right? So your mind choosing to cling to this perception because of its unwholesome qualities is just going to run you into difficulties where you could potentially become unskillful. But even if all of this is happening within your own mind, it's really exhausting to think this way about other people. So you would like to clean this up out of your mind where you're not clinging to a perception, that you're always looking for the truth. And where you see the mind's judgment coming up, where you're judging other people, you would like to cut that off and let it go. Not only can the mind's ego project its unwholesome qualities onto others and read that as coming from others, when in reality it's coming from your own mind, you can even project wholesome qualities out into the world and crave permanence with expectations that other people will do the same things as you, attempting to control others rather than just allowing everyone to make their own choices and decisions in life. So for example, say that you've recently switched over to a plant-based food supply. Maybe it's been a few weeks or a few months or however long that it's been. And now this wholesome thing that you perceive that you're doing, you might think everybody should be doing this because now you're doing it. Everybody should be doing it. And anybody who eats meat, you might look down on them because of that. Where that's your mind's ego. That's your conceit measuring and comparing. Instead of realizing that everybody is progressing on the path at their own pace. And not everybody is going to choose to move to a plant-based food supply. And not everybody's going to choose to do it at the same time as you. That's the mind craving permanence. So if you project your wholesome qualities onto other people and wanting and expecting them to do things your same way, this is the mind's conceit, thinking, I know what's best for other people. Whenever you allow your mind to indulge in that kind of thinking and then you put actions behind it, this is really detrimental. Because when you have attachment to people, when you're not practicing true love, love without attachment, you might try to step into someone's life and put expectations on them, giving them unsolicited guidance, telling them what is wholesome and unwholesome, and telling them what they should or shouldn't be doing in life. Because the way that the mind's ego works is the mind thinks that what I'm doing is the right way and what everyone else is doing is the wrong way. Now the mind will try to step in to people's life and try to tell them what you should or shouldn't be doing. And now it creates struggles and difficulties in your relationships. And now you find that people aren't comfortable being in those kinds of situations, and they might push you away because of their aversion. So it would be very unwise to step into someone's life, giving them unsolicited guidance, putting expectations on them, and telling them what they should or shouldn't be doing. It's important that people reach out for that guidance. And if they're not reaching out for the guidance, then that's a choice that they're making, and they're going to continue to struggle and have difficulties. But as soon as you allow your mind to think you're better or superior, and that you've got to tell other people what they should or shouldn't be doing in life, that's your mind's ego. So what you might be coming to the conclusion of when talking about this topic is that ego serves no purpose. There's no beneficial purpose here, that it's just going to stand in your way of having harmonious relationships with all the people around you, that the mind's going to have this ego that comes out on other people, and now that person's ego is going to rise up against you. So what you would like to do is eradicate and eliminate this ego and this arrogance, this pride, this measuring and comparing, this wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And as you do so, not only will your relationship significantly improve, but your mind will become more peaceful and more joyful, because it's exhausting to go out into the world and try to convince other people to look at you in a certain way. But when you get rid of all of this, your mind can be at ease, because again, an enlightened being can just walk down the street with wisdom and a smile. They don't need to go out and convince other people who they are or what they've done in the world. They can just walk down the street with wisdom and a smile. One of the best ways to know someone is not enlightened is that they will tell you that they are enlightened. Because as soon as someone tells you, by the way, did you know I'm enlightened, right? This is the ego coming out. This is the boastfulness, the arrogance, the pride. So right away, you know this individual isn't enlightened. So as you get closer and closer to enlightenment and your mind's becoming more and more peaceful and more joyful, all you need to do is walk down the street with wisdom and a smile. You don't need to convince anybody in this world about anything whatsoever. If people are interested in learning something and how your mind's becoming more and more peaceful, they'll ask you questions, and then you can help them with that. So what I'm going to do now with the rest of our time is I'm going to help you to understand how to eliminate personal existence view and conceit. There's certain things that you can be doing to work on eliminating personal existence view and conceit. And this takes a significant amount of time. In terms of getting rid of the fetters, it's not a couple of days, a couple of weeks, or even a couple of months. The ego takes multiple years to eliminate. You're going to need to gradually wear it away with multiple things. Now, the first thing that is important is that you get the Eightfold Path well underway. You're going to need to memorize the Eightfold Path inside and out, backwards and forwards, left, right, up, down. If you haven't done that yet, I suggest you go back to chapter 4 and 5 and really spend some time soaking that into your mind to the point where you can memorize it, because you're not going to be able to practice it if you don't have it memorized. So if you would like to schedule a personal guidance session with me to be able to sit down and kind of almost like you're teaching me the Eightfold Path to confirm your understanding of it, you're more than welcome to do that. Because if somebody asked you, hey, what is right intention? You should be able to say intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. And you would like to know how to practice those things too. Or if someone says, hey, by the way, the Buddha teaches that right speech thing, what is that all about? You should be able to say, well, right speech is eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. And you would know exactly what those things are. And then more importantly, the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Talking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. And again, knowing how to practice those things. So you would like to go through the entire Eightfold Path and make sure that you commit that to memory. And that's going to take several weeks and maybe even months to do that, because that's how you're going to be able to bring this into your practice, is actually memorizing the Eightfold Path. There's very few teachings that you actually need to memorize. You're going to need to understand all of them, but you're going to need to memorize the Eightfold Path. in order to internalize it and actually be practicing it. Because as you're doing that, your mind's going to be slowly eliminating its craving, its anger, and its ignorance. And as you do, you're going to start experiencing the jhanas. The jhanas are preliminary phases that the mind goes through where you experience enhanced qualities of mind. And when you're experiencing these enhanced qualities of mind, it's almost like the light bulb is flickering. You're getting these little glimpses of what enlightenment is like, but they're kind of short-lived, just for a few moments, a few minutes, even a few hours, that your mind will experience this overwhelming peace and joy in the mind, not based on any condition. The mind is just experiencing this peace and joy. And there's certain qualities that I teach as part of the jhanas. I'm not going to teach you what the jhanas are today, but there's these enhanced qualities that you will experience. And I teach those in other programs, so you'll know what they are. But when your mind's starting to move into those jhanas, this is an indication for you that you're putting together the Eightfold Path really well. And your mind's about to make its way to the first stage of enlightenment. And that's the time where it's helpful to start doing this meditation to realize non-self. It's in volume 1, chapter 11, and I explain how to do it there. And I've actually taught classes on this, and it's been recorded that you can see how to do this meditation. But if you just started out with this from the very beginning, it's not going to have the same effect. You need to kind of soften up the mind with the Eightfold Path and all the teachings that are there before this meditation to realize non-self is actually going to be effective. So you would like to bring that in when you're starting to experience the jhanas. Then it would be wise to start looking at changing your language in the way that you speak about this being. You would like to disassociate with this word my, or referring to this body or mind in a certain way. So for example, we might say, with a lack of wisdom of personal existence view, we might say, I am hungry, or I am thirsty, or I am tired, or I have a headache, right? There's this I that's in there, this my. That's my phone, my son, my wife, my car, my house. Well, this is just reinforcing that personal existence view. But you can disassociate with this personal existence view by changing the language to be able to represent true reality of what's truly happening. It's really not that I am hungry. The true reality is that the body needs food. That's true reality. The body needs food. There is no I here to be hungry, right? It's just that the body needs food. Well, it's not that I am thirsty. It's that the body needs water. It's not that I have a headache. It's the head hurts, right? So if you start thinking this way, and maybe even talking this way, it'll be really helpful. Instead of hand me my mobile phone, you might say, can you hand me the mobile phone? Instead of I'm going to my house, it's I'm going to the house. So you can disassociate with how you relate to certain relationships and objects and life situations around you. And this will help kind of peel away this personal existence view. And you might be able to do this in 90, 95, even 98% of the time. But there's going to be some rare situations where you're not going to be able to do this. So like when I introduce my son to different people, I will say, this is my son, Bailan. But my mind knows he's not mine. He doesn't belong to me. That I introduce him that way because it's easy for people to know who he is, but my mind doesn't associate with this as being my son because he's his own individual being and he needs to make his own decisions. But if I was to say true reality, it would sound kind of weird, right? If I was to say, this is the being that I contributed sperm to over 13 years ago in order to create him, right? They would be like, whoa, I don't know, sure if I'm interested in getting to enlightenment. These people talk kind of weird, right? So I don't say that. But my mind knows that that's true reality. That's what's truly happened, is I contributed sperm to create this being. And now we think about it as this is my son, but he's not really mine. He's his own being. And yes, I've taken on the role of helping him to learn and grow and develop in the world, but he's not mine. I'm impermanent in his life. So there's certain situations where you can start changing your thinking and changing the way you speak. And about 90, 95, 98% of the time, you can speak in a way that represents true reality, getting this I am, getting this my out of the way, where you can ultimately realize that this body was born on a certain land, but your mind doesn't have to adopt the identity of I am American or I am Canadian or I am German. You can shed that out of the mind. As part of this work, you're going to need to deeply soak into the mind the perception of impermanence, where you can observe that the world around you is impermanent. Because what the mind's doing with personal existence view is it's craving permanence. This body and this mind, it's wanting these things to be permanent, having a certain self-image or a self-identity, and you need to really soak this impermanence into the mind where you can see true reality about this universal truth all around you. So when you're walking down the street and you see a crack in the sidewalk, impermanence. When you're looking at a fence and you see the paint is faded, that's impermanence. When you look in a tree and you see that there's green leaves in the tree and brown leaves on the ground, that's impermanence. You need to be constantly seeing this impermanence in the world around you and deeply soak that into the mind so the mind understands that it would be unwise to cling to this body or cling to this mind because it is impermanent. As soon as you allow the mind to cling to this body or this mind, you're setting yourself up for discontentedness because these things are going to change. It's only a matter of time. The thing that you're going to find that has the biggest effect, is wearing simple clothing and making your appearance look very simple. How you choose to do this or whether you choose to do this is up to you. Of course, everything on the path to enlightenment is up to you. But this is the thing that's going to have the biggest impact, is changing the way you perceive out in the world, the way that you go out into the world with certain clothing, jewelry, makeup, scents, facial hair and head hair and things like this. And then also disassociating with how you speak about this being. So what the Buddha did is he wore orange robes, rag robes, and he shaved his hair, right? And that's what he did to be able to go out into the world and ensure that his mind doesn't have personal existence view, that he didn't want to be perceived by others in a certain way. When he was a prince destined to become a king, I'm sure he wore all kinds of elaborate clothing and fabrics and jewels and, thrones, and he had a throne, probably had a crown on his head, probably had all kinds of things like that, right? But now if you're looking to strip away this personal existence view, not wanting and longing, yearning for others to perceive you a certain way, you could wear simple clothing. Some people go to like just all one type of clothing. Like you see, I wear white every single day. It's the same exact clothing. You could do those kinds of things where you wear all white or all black or all blue or whatever it is. You could do those kinds of things. But if you're not interested in purchasing a whole new wardrobe, there's other ways for you to accomplish the same thing. You can actually take the clothing that you have and stack it up and then pick off the top and just wear whatever is there. Because your mind is going to want to stand in front of your closet, think about who it is you're going to see today, and then pick a certain set of clothing that you would like other people to perceive you as. But when you just pick off the top of a stack, you're not allowing your mind to have that choice so that you can get rid of this personal existence view. So if you go into formal environments where you need to wear formal clothes, you might have those clothes lined up in a certain way. You just pick the first one. And then you have casual or informal clothes that you just pick off the top. But you're going to need to be careful because I'll share with you what's going to happen. Even when you have your clothes stacked up on a stack, you're going to be wanting to grab from the middle of your stack. And the reason why I know this is that even when I had all these white clothes and I first started moving to these white clothes, there were certain white shirts that fit me a little bit better than others. And I would think about who I was going to go see, and I would go try to grab that one from the middle of the stack that fit me a little bit better than the other ones. And where you see your mind doing that, that's the personal existence view. It can't be comfortable to just pick off the top. So when you're going to grab for that thing in the middle, you've got to cut that off and let that go and realize that that's trimming back your personal existence view. So you can wear simple clothing, you can eliminate jewelry and makeup and things like this. And what I suggest you do is you wear these things maybe one day and you don't wear them the other day. So if you're used to going out into the world with certain jewelry or makeup, even like a watch on your wrist, you'll go out into the world without those things and you'll feel uncomfortable. If you get attached to wearing like a wedding ring or something like this, when you go out into the world, you'll feel discontent. You'll feel uncomfortable, unsatisfied going out into the world without that. So you're going to need to introduce some impermanence and kind of mix this up. Or maybe you go out one day with it and one day without those things. One day with them, one day without them. And then maybe you go out 2 or 3 or 4 days without them and one day with it. If you're married and your partner doesn't know what you're doing, you might want to give them the heads up that you're going to be taking off your wedding ring sometimes. And that doesn't mean anything about your relationship. It just means that you're working on personal existence view, right? So you can insert some impermanence there and get to the point where you're just as comfortable going outside with these things as without them. And now, once you've seen that the mind has done that for an extended long-term period of time, you might just choose to wear these things because you enjoy wearing them and you like having a wedding ring, or you prefer to wear a particular thing of jewelry or something like this. So you're going to need to do this for a period of time, minimum 6 months, maybe upwards of a year, where you're introducing this impermanence. But then eventually you're going to be able to just go back to whatever it is that you prefer to wear and just kind of do that on a regular basis. Even if you have like scents of cologne or perfume and you're used to going out with those things, you're going to need to introduce some impermanence here. One of the things that the Buddha taught is eliminating head hair and facial hair. What people tend to see is that men have a harder time eliminating facial hair, where women have a harder time eliminating head hair. Where if you do cut off your hair, this is one of the biggest, most impactful things that you can do in order to help you eliminate personal existence view. Again, whether you choose to do this or not, it's your choice. There's people who have gotten to enlightenment through elimination of personal existence view without doing this. It just takes quite a bit longer for the mind to do that. So if you would like to eliminate your head hair, your facial hair, you can do that. What I suggest you do is you do it gradually. Particularly if you have like long hair, you might cut it back shorter and shorter and shorter, wear it like that for several weeks, and then cut it back shorter and shorter and shorter before you actually take it all the way off. Or if you're the type of person that likes to jump into the deep end of the swimming pool, then just shave it all off, right? If that's what you would like to do. And then for those of you guys that have facial hair, you might do the same thing. If you have like a full beard and a mustache, you might choose to go down to a goatee for a little while, then choose to go down to a mustache, and then kind of shave that back. So you can do these things gradually, or if you'd like to just jump in the deep end, you can do that too. Some students choose to do that. These are some of the most impactful things that are going to help you to eliminate personal existence view. And then whenever you see this interest to project your self-image or self-identity out into the world, where you see with your mindfulness, your awareness of mind, you see this arising of this interest to project this self-image or self-identity, you're going to need to cut that off and let it go. Cut it off and let it go. It's like a wild bush. You got to cut it back and cut it back and cut it back and cut it back. Eventually, you're going to uproot this personal existence view out of the mind, and then you're not going to have a care in the world about this kind of thing. But as you're making your way towards that, you're going to need to use your mindfulness or awareness of mind to be able to spot that when it's arising and cut it off and let it go. This is part of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, that you're aware of this mental object that is arising. This personal existence view is arising. You need to be aware of that and cut that off and let it go. And then at different times, you might decide to seek guidance with a teacher over multiple sessions. You're always welcome to reach out in these classes. You can post in our Facebook group. You can send me private messages, or you can schedule personal guidance and I will help you. So let me know what questions you guys have here on eliminating personal existence view. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, we have a question coming in from Chris, and we have some coming in from Mayuli as well. You're welcome, Amina. Pleased to help you. Let's see. Mayuli's asking, knowing the teachings of the Buddha, when others try to recruit or invite me into joining other teachings or religion, I listen to what they have to say for respect, but in the mind, I know the Buddha teaching is the best, and I'm learning from the best. Is this considered conceit? Well, if I were you, I would just understand that you know and have confidence that the teachings that you're learning and that you're practicing are the truth, and you don't need to judge others' teachings. And you're not saying that that's what you're doing, but you don't need to judge others as being less than the Buddha or more than the Buddha. Just have the confidence that you know what you're learning is the truth, and you're not interested in exploring anything else, and you just know that for yourself. And you can just stay with that. So nothing that you've said here shows me that there's conceit in regard to this topic. Because if there was conceit here, there'd be some measuring and comparing of putting the Buddhist teachings and other teachings higher or lower. But instead, what I'm hearing is confidence. If you would like to eradicate that word best, you could do that, where it's just like, I understand and I have confidence in what I'm learning and I know that it's working. You don't have to think of it as best, because there's a little bit of measuring and comparing there, but you don't have to think of it that way. So yeah, you can know that and have confidence in that and just walk forward without having any kind of conceit. Chris is saying, hello, Teacher David. Does the light flickering mean that initially a person will only experience the jhanas for a few moments at a time? Perhaps it's different for each person, Chris. It's not going to be exactly the same way for every single person, but there is going to be the flickering, the experiencing of the enhanced qualities of mind. More importantly, there's going to be sustainable qualities that are in the mind that the Buddha describes as part of the jhanas and that I teach as part of the courses and classes where I describe the jhanas. So it's not just that you get these flickering that is going to be determining whether you're in the jhanas or not. It's that you're having a consistent long-term experience of enhanced qualities of mind, and those enhanced qualities are explained in the jhanas. Teacher David, in addition to not speaking true reality in certain circumstances, is it important to also make ourselves presentable in terms of hygiene and cleanliness, including our appearance? Yes, that's where we can choose to make wise decisions about caring for this body without actually wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. So if we go out of our way with craving, desire, attachment, longing, yearning, wanting every little hair to be in exactly the right spot, that's the personal existence view. That's the craving, desire, attachment, and the mind can't be peaceful and joyful there. But if you are all the way on the other side, where you did nothing for this physical body and you could care less how this physical body looked when you went out into the world, that would be all the way on the other side. And this is typically what the unenlightened mind can see very clearly, because the unenlightened mind likes to see black and white. But there's this middle way that the unenlightened mind has difficulty to see, which is pursuing things as a goal, objective, or interest through making wise decisions. And it's wise to care for this body. For example, today I went to the dentist and I had my teeth cleaned, right? Not because I want other people to perceive this being in a certain way, but it's just wise to go to the dentist every so often and having your teeth cleaned. It's good for the hygiene of this being. And if the body is healthy, it's going to be good for this being. That's showing loving kindness and compassion for this being. So you can do that without personal existence view. So you need to be able to learn how to do that you can be hygienic and you can be clean and you can go out into the world and even be presentable for other people. And those people might be judging you, but in your mind, it doesn't affect your mind. Can this be done for professional reasons without it being personal existence view? Yes. There's wise decision making. Again, the unenlightened mind is going to want to see things as black and white. It's going to see either longing, yearning, and wanting others to perceive you in a certain way, or it's going to be all the way on the other side where it could care less about how it looks. But there's this middle way that you need to be able to come to and learn how to practice that and then get more and more comfortable with the mind being there. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. So let's move into conceit. I'll explain to you how to eradicate this. With the mind saying thank you, sorry, or speaking polite using terms like sir or ma'am, these are really helpful to help eradicate the conceit, allowing the mind to be humble. Because what the conceit is where there's that arrogance, that pride, making yourself to be superior, inferior to other people. So when you're saying things like thank you, sorry, or sir or ma'am, this is really helpful for the mind. One of the best, most helpful phrases for the mind in terms of conceit is saying the phrase, I do not know. The ego is not going to want you to say that, right? When somebody asks you a question, you're going to be really conflicted and you're not going to be able to just say, I do not know. So you would like to get comfortable with saying this because even as an enlightened being, you are not going to know everything, right? As an enlightened being, you will know the path to enlightenment inside and out, backwards and forwards. You'll know everything about the path to enlightenment. But if someone said, how do you fly a helicopter? You might say, I don't know, right? Because you're never trained in that, right? Or they might say, how do you bake a cake? I don't know. You might not have never baked a cake before and you don't know. And it's okay to say, I do not know. But when you've got conceit in there and you've got this personal existence view, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, you'll really struggle with saying, I do not know. So you need to get comfortable with saying that in situations. One of the things that's going to help you the most with your conceit, and this can sound strange for people who haven't been to Asia and who don't understand these teachings very well, is sleeping in a low position is going to be really helpful for the mind. If you look at the world of where in certain cultures and groups of people, ego is the strongest, you will see that they sleep on high position beds and very luxurious beds with lots of wonderful fabrics and pillows and things like this. But if you can lower your bed, even putting the mattress just straight on the floor, getting rid of the frame, the box spring, all of that stuff, just putting your mattress straight on the floor, it'll take you all of about 3 to 5 minutes to set this up, and you will be reaping the rewards of that for many, many weeks and months and years to come. Because you're going to need to go down into the bed and get up out of the bed, and it's going to humble your mind over a consistent long-term period. So this is one of the best things that you can do. You would like to have your bed either at knee height or below, preferably below. Here in Thailand, it's actually really hard to find a bed that's higher than your knee because people here know this, right? And they sleep in a low position. So I would encourage you to look at your sleeping position and put your mattress down on the floor. You can get rid of all that other stuff. You really don't actually need it. If there are certain tasks that you think are beneath you or below you, like maybe you think washing dishes is below you or cleaning a toilet is below you, or maybe there's some other task that you think is below you or beneath you, you would like to do those tasks. You would like to get in there and do those things. Roll up your sleeves. Get down on the floor and scrub the floor by hand. This is really helpful for your mind to be doing these kinds of things consistently, because the mind's going to think that there's certain tasks that you just don't do and only other people do these things. Well, do those things and show your mind that, hey, you're just like everybody else. You would like to think of yourself as being equal, just like everyone else. Listening to other people teach you wisdom without any interest to teach them, this is going to be really helpful for you. And you guys are doing this on a regular basis if you're learning with me, because you're regularly learning with me and you're not trying to teach me anything at all. But you would also like to do this in other situations too, maybe in a social situation or things like this, where you just listen to what other people have to say without an interest to teach them anything. Because the ego, this conceit, is going to want to come up over the top of them. When somebody says something intelligent or wise, you're going to want to come over the top of them because your ego wants to be above them. Whereas if they said something fairly intelligent and smart, you're like, no, I can't let them be the alpha male or the alpha female. I've got to be the alpha male or alpha female. So let me say something more wise than them and put myself above them. So you would like to just listen to people teach you wisdom without any interest in teaching them anything. Another thing that'll really help you is washing people's feet. This is something that happens here in Thailand. We call it Dam Hua, where at New Year's, on Mother's Day, Father's Day, maybe your birthday or something like this, you might wash your parents' feet, where you get down on the ground and you have a bowl of water and you wash their feet. Some people do this for their older brothers or sisters, their grandparents, even teachers, because here in Thailand, they really respect teachers a lot because they understand how much wisdom is important to society. So they wash people's feet occasionally in order to show care and respect and appreciation, but also to humble your own mind. And when you do this the first few times, you might actually be shaking while you're doing this. This is your ego being conflicted with what you're doing, because you're putting the mind in a situation where it doesn't want to be. This ego doesn't want to put itself down on the floor and wash somebody's feet. So you might actually notice some shaking in your hands and in your mind because of this. So each time you do this, the mind will become more and more settled and more comfortable. You might decide to start showing respect and gratitude through whying people. What whying means is put your palms together, palm to palm, and then bring it up towards your head and then lowering your head. This is what we do here in Thailand as a way of greeting somebody, but also saying goodbye as well. And this is a way of showing respect and appreciation and gratitude and saying hello and goodbye, but it's also a way to humble your own mind. This is becoming an international symbol now. When I travel internationally, I do this everywhere I go, whether I'm in the USA or Egypt or somewhere else. I do it everywhere that I go. And people understand it as a warm thank you, and I respect you, and these kinds of things. And this will really help to humble your mind. If you're doing this 10, 15, 20 times a day throughout your day, it'll really humble your mind. Even when I used to ride a motorbike, when I leave out of the village, we have people that open the gates for us in the front of the village. When I went through the gate and I got my two hands on the handlebars, I would actually lower my head and bow my head as I'm making my way through the gate. And even now that I drive a car, one of the things that we do here in Thailand is we give a salute. And when you give a salute to somebody, this is like a really formal way of showing respect and appreciation to somebody. So when I drive out of the village in my car, I salute the security guards and showing them, hey, I really respect you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you opening the gate for me, right? So you can be doing these kinds of things in your day-to-day life that you just integrated in, where there's a 2 or 3 second thing here or there. And this is what's going to gradually work to wear away the ego. You would like to practice generosity, loving kindness, and compassion. Generosity is the giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return. Loving kindness is the genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And the compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. As you're practicing these kinds of qualities in your mind, this will actually help to humble your own mind, that things don't have to be always self-satisfying, that you're out in the world doing things with individuals where it's not just about you, it's not about me, it's about, in some cases, helping other people as well. So these are mental states that you maintain in your mind. Whether you actually have any action behind it or not is a choice for you to make. If you see that homeless person that doesn't have a house on the street, you might choose to buy them some food or water or something like that. That could be a choice some days, but other days that might not be the choice you make. Maybe you're on your way to a business meeting, you're already late, and you need to hurry up and get into the meeting, where you can maintain the mind's loving kindness and compassion, but you just haven't put any action behind it. So you would like to maintain that genuine interest in seeing this person be well and have concern for their misfortune. But in that situation, you're just choosing not to put action behind it, and that's okay. That's just impermanence. You'd like to eliminate any judgment where the mind is comparing yourself as being superior or inferior. Wherever you see that arising with your mindfulness, cut that off and let it go. You can choose to be kind and gentle because you know it's the right thing to do, not because you want something from this person. Just be kind and gentle with everybody around you. If other people choose to be bitter, harsh, and hostile and degrading, that's their choice. You can just choose to walk away with your wisdom and a smile. You don't need to take that personally. That's their choice to do that. You can ask people advice and what they've learned in life and just listen to what they have to say without trying to prove anything to them, because that's what the ego is going to do. It's going to want to prove yourself to others. It's going to look for that validation and that confirmation that you're a smart, important person. You can help others without any expectation of anything in return or any kind of favor or positive benefit for yourself. You can seek guidance from a teacher helping you to be able to get to enlightenment, because the mind has to admit to itself when it's asking help from a teacher that you don't know everything about this world and you need help from other people. This is really good to admit to the mind that you don't know something, and asking somebody questions can be really helpful. Wherever you see the mind projecting its arrogance, its pride, trying to judge other people or measuring and comparing others, cut that off and let it go. Don't allow the mind to continue to do that. Once again, that's your mindfulness of the mental objects, those 4 foundations of mindfulness. You would like to be aware of this mental object of conceit that is arising, where the mind maybe wants to plaster all over social media that you just got this important certificate, or you just got this amazing job, or your child just got these really great grades. Now let me show everybody how my child did this amazing thing in the world. This is the mind's pride, trying to be proud, saying, I've got something that you don't have, and I am better than you. So you would like to eliminate that. Now, I know that many of you have been taught to go around the world and be proud of what you've accomplished. But pride is standing in your way of enlightenment, because what the mind's pride is doing is it's forming conditioned pleasant feelings based on you having accomplished something that you think other people haven't. Or your mind is trying to take this pleasure of importance, that you are more important than other people in terms of what you've accomplished, where you can just gradually work your way towards certain accomplishments in your day-to-day life. You don't need to go out there and be proud and show off to other people about what you've accomplished or what you haven't accomplished. Just internally within your own mind, just have confidence that you're working in the right direction. Even if you're not out there posting it all over Facebook and social media and other things and blabbing to other people how you've accomplished certain things, even within your own mind, if you're noticing this pride arise, the mind still has conceit. So you're going to need to cut that off and let it go. So anytime you see with your mindfulness this conceit arising, you're going to need to cut it off and let it go. And then as you need help with this, you can ask questions. You can get help over multiple sessions of how to eliminate this conceit from the mind. So anytime you need help, feel free to reach out in all of those different ways. So do you guys have any questions on how to eradicate conceit from the mind? Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. All right, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do is just end with this last thing. This last thing is that as you're making your way towards the elimination of your ego, you will ultimately get to a point where you might be pretty confident that the ego has been eliminated, but I don't suggest you ever convince yourself of that, because the ego is always in there trying to convince you that you're more enlightened than you really are. Because if the ego can convince you that you're more enlightened than you really are, the ego gets to stick around, right? So it's like this dirty animal. It's like this being almost. It's not a being. It's a mental state. It's a mental object in the mind, but it's almost like this dirty little devil in your mind. It's almost like a bad tenant that is trying to stick around. It doesn't give you any benefit. Every time you think that you've got this bad tenant out of your house, it keeps trying to figure out a way to stick around, right? And your ego is going to be that way. It's going to keep trying to figure out a way to stick around. So if it can convince you that you're more enlightened than you actually are, then it can stick around for longer because you're not going to take action to be able to eliminate it. So I suggest you always and forever develop your practice to eliminate the ego and never convince yourself or assume that it's been extinguished, because the moment that you think it's been extinguished, you're going to miss it when it rises its head, because you'll go a period of time, maybe 3 months or 6 months, where you think that your ego's gone. And if you convince yourself, game over, the ego's gone, well, in the 7th, 8th, 9th month, when your ego arises, you're going to miss it. And there, your ego is going to get to stick around. It's kind of like that game Whack-A-Mole. If you ever played that game Whack-A-Mole where it has the moles coming up and you've got that mallet in your hand, well, if you think that the game's over, you're just going to stand there with your mallet and you're not going to see the Whack-A-Mole coming up. You're going to miss it, right? You're going to put your mallet down maybe, and you're going to miss it when the mole pops its head up, right? So you're not ever interested in thinking game is over. You'll eventually get to the point where it's been 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. You don't see any discontentedness in your mind whatsoever. You're going to know that the mind is enlightened, but you're going to always be cultivating wisdom, because that's what's led to this improvement to the condition of your mind. This is what's led to the very best thing that's ever happened for you, which is the elimination of conditioned feelings. But you're never interested in convincing yourself of that, because that's where complacency can come in, and that's where the ego can come in. And if any of those things are coming in, your mind's actually not enlightened. So don't convince yourself that these things are actually eliminated. Just stay vigilant. Just stay dedicated and determined that whenever you see this personal existence view, the mind wanting to project a certain self-image or self-identity out into the world, that you cut that off and let it go. And where you see the arrogance and the pride, the measuring and comparing, trying to judge others, maybe you're walking down the street and you're judging someone's clothing or the way they look or the way they talk or the way they walk, you would like to cut that off and let that go and not allow your mind to do that, because it's actually harming your own mind and it's standing in your way of having satisfying, fulfilling, and sustaining relationships. Because when you're arrogant and prideful and boastful, people are just going to push you aside. They're not going to be interested in being around that. So an enlightened being can just walk down the street with wisdom and a smile. You don't need to judge other people. You don't need to convince other people of anything. Just walk down the street with your wisdom and a smile. That's it. Okay? So this is everything that I have to share with you guys today on dissolving the ego. I see, Mike, you have a question there. If you're interested to stick around after class, we can talk about it after class. But what I'd like to do is just say goodbye to all of you guys and thanking you all for attending class and being interested to learn and practice the teachings of the Buddha. Next week on Sunday, I'm going to be teaching chapter 17, which is titled Eliminating Fears. Are you really scared? I'm going to be teaching at the same times, even though I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to be traveling starting on Thursday morning Thai time, and I'm going to be heading towards San Francisco in the USA. But all the standard classes of Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday, they're all going to be happening as normal because I can teach while I'm still traveling. And then the classes and courses that I'm teaching out in California, those are going to be live streamed as well. So I'm going to be teaching on a time zone that I don't normally teach on. So you might actually be able to attend some of those classes from the course that I'm going to be teaching out in California. And then, of course, on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing meditation with you guys. So you guys are more than welcome to attend the meditation. And then I open up to any and all questions that you guys would like to ask. So thank you all for your questions. Thank you for your interest in learning. Thank you for anything you do to support me and help me to be able to offer these teachings to you on a day-by-day basis, because I really appreciate all of your love and your care and your generosity and your support to be able to help me to offer these teachings to you and everybody else around the world. So perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Take care. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.